The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. The Federation was built on the certainty that even the most inexplicable phenomena could eventually be rationalized, categorized, and comprehended. But what happens when an omnipotent being decides that humanity's greatest test isn't surviving the unknown, but surviving the known, when the known is a god demanding absolute submission? Deep Space Nine hung at the edge of the Bajoran system like a sentinel, its docking pylons extended toward the celestial temple the Bajorans called the Wormhole. Inside Ops, Captain Benjamin Sisko reviewed reports from the Dominion front with the weary focus of a man who'd been fighting an existential war for too long. The Founders wanted to impose order on the Alpha Quadrant. The Federation stood for freedom. It was, despite the bloodshed, a conflict he could understand. The flash of light that accompanied Q's arrival was almost mundane by now. "Oh, Benjamin," Q announced, materializing in his Starfleet captain's uniform, hands clasped behind his back with theatrical authority. "Still playing soldier, I see. How wonderfully predictable." Sisko didn't look up from his PDD. "We're busy, Q. Whatever test you have planned, take it somewhere else." "Test?" Q's eyebrows rose in mock offense. "My dear Captain, I'm here to broaden your horizons. You've spent years dealing with those tedious prophets of yours, beings who exist outside linear time but can barely manage a coherent conversation. I thought it was time you met some real gods." That got Sisko's attention. He set down the PDD slowly. "What are you talking about?" Q snapped his fingers. The air in the center of Ops rippled, and something massive materialized. A ring of metal nearly 7 meters in diameter, covered in symbols that made the universal translator stutter in confusion. The interior filled with a shimmering, unstable surface that resembled the wormhole, but felt fundamentally wrong. Chief O'Brien's engineering console erupted in alerts. "Chief?" Sisko demanded. O'Brien's hands flew across the controls, his face pale. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures that don't match anything in our database. The device is generating a stable wormhole, but the physics are all wrong. It shouldn't be possible." "Ah, but it is," Q said, circling the ring with obvious satisfaction. "The ancients, clever little evolved humans from another reality entirely, built a network of these Stargates connecting thousands of worlds. Ingenious technology, really. Almost as elegant as continuum manipulation. And this particular gate? I've dialed it to a very special address. The Ori Galaxy." Kira Neri stepped forward, her hand instinctively moving toward her phaser. "Another galaxy? Q, close that thing now." "Where's the fun in that, Major? You see, the Ori are ascended beings, much like your precious prophets, but with one crucial difference. They demand worship. And when they don't get it..." Q's smile turned cold. "Well, you'll see." The event horizon shimmered, and something emerged. The figure was humanoid, draped in dark robes that seemed to absorb light. His staff, ornate, topped with a crystalline structure, struck the deck plating with a resonant clang that silenced every conversation in Ops. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "I am Prior Damaris, servant of the Ori. Hallowed are the Ori." Sisko moved to intercept, keeping his body language open but authoritative. "First contact protocols, even under these circumstances. I'm Captain Benjamin Sisko of the United Federation of Planets. You're aboard Deep Space Nine, a Federation station. We mean you no harm, but you'll need to explain your presence here." The Prior's eyes, milky white, unseeing yet somehow aware of everything, fixed on Sisko. "The Ori have gazed upon this realm and found it lacking in faith. We have come to offer you enlightenment. Through the Ori, you will find the path to ascension. Through origin, you will know truth." "We're not interested in..." Kira began. The Prior raised one hand. Kira's phaser tore itself from her holster and crushed into a compact sphere of metal, clattering harmlessly to the floor. O'Brien lunged for the weapons locker, but the doors sealed shut with a thought. Odo shifted into his liquid state and surged forward, only to freeze mid-flow, suspended in the air like amber. "Do not mistake my patience for weakness," the prior said calmly. "The Ori are all-powerful. They see all, know all, and their love is infinite for those who accept origin. For those who reject it." He gestured toward Odo, who suddenly reformed, gasping. "There is only suffering." Sisko's jaw tightened. "We're a peaceful station. We respect all faiths. But we don't respond well to threats." "This is not a threat, Captain. It is a promise. The Book of Origin speaks the truth. The power and greatness of the Ori cannot be denied, and those who embrace the path shall be raised up. I have come to share this truth with your worlds. Beginning with Bajorans." The prior turned toward the Stargate, staff striking the deck with each step. "Wait," Sisko ordered, but his voice carried no weight. The prior walked through the shimmering barrier and vanished. For 3 seconds, Ops was silent except for the thrumming of the Stargate. Then Sisko rounded on Q, fury replacing caution. "What the hell have you done?" Q examined his fingernails with studied disinterest. "I've given you a gift, Benjamin. You've spent years as the emissary, mediating between the faithful and the skeptics, between Bajoran mysticism and Federation rationalism. But your prophets don't demand anything. They barely interact with you at all. The Ori? They're the real deal. Gods with followers, miracles on demand, and an unshakable certainty that they're right." He leaned closer, his expression suddenly serious. "Let's see how your precious principles hold up when faith has power, when false gods can prove they're real, and when the only way to win might be genocide." "Close the gate, Q," Sisko said quietly. "I don't think I will. Consider this a learning opportunity." Q vanished with his characteristic flash. The Stargate continued to pulse, a doorway to another galaxy, to beings who called themselves gods and had the power to make believers of anyone. On the view screen, Bajorans turned peacefully in the void, unaware that a prior was already walking its surface. Sisko's comm badge chirped. "Ops, this is Dax. We're picking up unusual energy readings from the planet's surface. Benjamin, people are gathering in the capital. Thousands of them. And they're all kneeling." The transport pad shimmered as Sisko materialized in Bayer's capital plaza, flanked by Kira and Worf. What greeted them defied everything Starfleet had taught him about the gradual process of cultural exchange. 15,000 Bajorans knelt in concentric circles around a single figure. The prior stood at the center, staff raised, his voice carrying across the plaza without amplification, without technology of any kind that sensors could detect. The words resonated in a language Sisko had never heard, yet understood perfectly. "And the Ori said, 'Let there be light to drive back the darkness,' and the faithful were lifted up while the wicked cowered in shadow. Witness the power of origin, and know that the Ori love you." The prior struck his staff against the cobblestones. A wave of golden energy exploded outward, washing over the crowd. Sisko saw a woman in the front row, her face scarred by industrial burns, suddenly whole. An elderly man threw aside his walking stick, tears streaming down his face. A child, withered by some degenerative disease, leaped to her feet with a shriek of joy. Spontaneous healing. Thousands of them. Simultaneously. Kira's tricorder went wild in her hands. "Benjamin, I'm reading cellular regeneration across the entire plaza. Neurological damage reversing itself. This isn't some trick, these people are actually being healed. The power of the Ori flows through those who accept origin." The prior continued. "Bow before their infinite wisdom, and you shall be raised up. Resist, and know only darkness." The crowd's response was thunderous. "Hallowed are the Ori!" Sisko pushed through the kneeling masses, Worf and Kira close behind. Starfleet protocols demanded he observe, analyze, maintain diplomatic composure. But watching an entire population fall under the sway of a power that could rewrite biology with a gesture triggered every instinct he had as both a captain and as the emissary. "Prior Damaris," Sisko called out, his voice cutting through the fervor. "We need to talk." The prior's milky eyes found him instantly. Ah, the emissary. The one who speaks for the false gods you call prophets. Have you come to kneel? I've come to ask you to leave Bajorans in peace. These people have their own faith, their own path. The Federation respects. Respects? The prior's laugh was gentle, almost pitying. You respect nothing, Captain? You hide behind words like diversity and tolerance while denying the fundamental truth. There are gods, and there are mortals. The Ori have ascended beyond your comprehension. They offer enlightenment. Your prophets offer riddles and silence. A Bajoran Vedic, Sisko recognized Vedic Porta from the assembly, stepped forward, her face flushed with righteous confusion. The prophets have guided us for millennia. They sent us the emissary. We don't need your... The prior gestured. Porta froze mid-sentence, her mouth open in a soundless scream. The Book of Origin teaches us, those who deny the path shall be shown the error of their ways. Witness. Porta's body lifted off the ground, suspended by invisible force. Her eyes went wide with terror as something invaded her mind, visions, perhaps, or pain beyond anything physical. When the prior lowered his staff, she collapsed, gasping. I saw them, she whispered, trembling. The Ori. They are everything. The prophets are nothing compared to. She stopped, horror dawning in her eyes at her own words. Kira's hand went to her phaser. Worf's fingers tightened on his disruptor. Sisko put a hand on each of their arms, restraining them. Starting a firefight in the middle of 15,000 civilians, many now converts, would be a massacre. You're forcing compliance, Sisko said, keeping his voice level. That's not faith. That's tyranny. Is it tyranny when a parent guides a child away from fire? The prior asked. The Ori do not force. They illuminate. Those who see the truth choose to follow. Those who refuse. He glanced at Porta, who was being helped to her feet by other Vedecs, her face still twisted in trauma. Learn. Behind them, the crowd's chanting grew louder. Hallowed are the Ori. Hallowed are the Ori. Sisko's combadge chirped. Captain, this is O'Brien. We've got a problem. 3 more priors just came through the Stargate. They're heading to different transporters. Looks like they're spreading out across Bajorans. And sir, the gate's still active. I can't shut it down. Every time I try, the system resets itself. Q's doing. Of course. The crusade has begun. The prior said serenely. By the time your sun set, 10,000 worlds will have heard the word of origin. Those who accept will thrive. Those who resist will be purged. It is the way of the Ori. Hallowed are the Ori. The crowd echoed. Hallowed are the Ori. Worf leaned close to Sisko. Captain, we should contact Starfleet Command. This is an invasion. But Sisko was watching the faces in the crowd. He saw wonder. Gratitude. The kind of fervent belief that came from witnessing genuine miracles. These weren't conquered people, they were converts. And conversion, he knew from centuries of Earth's bloody religious history, was far more dangerous than any military occupation. Bridge to Captain Sisko. It was Dax, her voice tight with urgency. Benjamin, you need to see this. We're receiving distress calls from 12 Federation colonies. They're all reporting the same thing, figures in robes, performing miracles, demanding worship. And Benjamin. Section 31 just contacted us. They want a meeting. Immediately. Sisko looked at the prior, at the kneeling masses, at Vedic Porta's haunted expression. Q had opened a door to another galaxy and let through something the Federation had never faced, gods who could prove their divinity and demanded obedience as the price of salvation. Sisko to Defiant. Lock onto our coordinates and beam us up. Now. As the transporter shimmer took him, Sisko saw the prior smile, a knowing, patient expression that promised this was only the beginning. On the view screen of the Defiant, Bajorans turned, and across its surface, golden light began to spread like a plague. The wardroom on Deep Space Nine felt smaller than usual with Luther Sloan sitting at the table. The Section 31 operative had materialized without clearance, without permission, without anything resembling protocol, which meant whatever he wanted was either critically important or catastrophically illegal. Probably both. Captain Sisko. Major Kira. Commander Worf. Sloan nodded to each in turn, his expression unreadable. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. We didn't agree to anything, Kira snapped. You broke into a secure facility during a crisis. A crisis I'm here to help resolve. Sloan activated a holo projector. Images flickered to life above the table, worlds Sisko recognized from Federation space. Except now they showed massive gatherings, stone temples under construction, populations kneeling before priors. In the past 6 hours, 42 Federation worlds have reported prior activity. 17 colonies have declared themselves followers of Origin. 4 planetary governments have officially renounced their Federation membership to embrace the Ori as their gods. The images shifted. Medical readouts, cellular scans, before and after holos of healings that defied every law of biology. They're performing genuine miracles. And when you can cure the incurable with a gesture, people listen. They believe. They convert. So Section 31 wants to kill them, Sisko said flatly. Don't be crude, Captain. We want to neutralize them. There's a difference. Sloan pulled up a new schematic. Biological data streams that made even Worf shift uncomfortably. We've analyzed the prior's physiology. They're human, or were, before the Ori enhanced them. Enhanced, not ascended. That makes them vulnerable. A targeted nanovirus, deployed through water supplies on converted worlds, could eliminate the priors without harming the civilian population. Remove the priests, and the religion collapses. Kira stood so violently her chair crashed backward. You want to poison people for spreading a religion? I want to stop an invasion before it becomes unstoppable. Sloan said calmly. Major, you saw what that prior did on Bajorans. Force visions. Psychological torture. That's not faith, that's conquest. And if we don't act now, while their numbers are still manageable, we'll be facing billions of converts willing to die for gods who actually answer prayers. He has a point. Worf rumbled. In war, one must strike decisively. The priors are the Ori's generals. Remove them, and the enemy cannot coordinate. Sisko rubbed his temples. The Dominion War had already forced him into moral compromises he'd never imagined making. Letting the Romulans into the war based on falsified evidence. Accepting Odo's decision to infect the Founders with a plague, before knowing there would be a cure. Every choice had been justified by necessity, by the greater good, by the certainty that the alternative was worse. But this was different. This was striking at faith itself. What happens to the converted populations after the priors are dead? Sisko asked quietly. They mourn. They question. Eventually, they realize their gods abandoned them. Sloan leaned forward. Captain, we estimate the Ori have enhanced approximately 200 priors. That's 200 individuals versus trillions of Federation citizens. The mathematics are simple. Mathematics. Kira's voice dripped contempt. Is that what we've become? Calculating acceptable casualties in our war on religion? We're at war with the Dominion. We can't afford a second front against omnipotent beings. Sloan's eyes hardened. And make no mistake. The Ori are targeting the Federation specifically. They know we represent secular governance, scientific rationalism, the idea that mortals don't need gods. We're a threat to everything they stand for. This isn't about faith. It's about power. The door chimed. Before Sisko could respond, it opened, and Captain Picard strode in, his face grim. Behind him, Admiral Ross followed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Captain Sisko, Picard said without preamble. I've been briefed on the situation. The Enterprise was en route to Deep Space Nine when we received a distress call from Bataste. A prior arrived and demanded the entire planetary council kneel. When they refused, he created a plague. 70,000 dead in 3 hours. The Council is now converting the entire population by governmental decree. The room went silent. Ross cleared his throat. Starfleet Command is considering all options, including Mr. Sloane's proposal. No. Picard's voice cut like a blade. Absolutely not. We do not assassinate religious figures, no matter how dangerous their message. The moment we start killing people for their beliefs, or for spreading beliefs, we become the very thing we claim to stand against. Even when those beliefs come with a body count? Sloane asked. Captain Picard, I respect your principles. I do. But the Ori aren't a religion. They're weaponized faith. They use miracles to convert, plagues to punish, and their followers as soldiers. This is an invasion force wearing robes instead of armor. Picard turned to Sisko. Captain, you're the emissary to the prophets. You understand the relationship between faith and reason better than anyone in Starfleet. What do you recommend? Sisko looked at the holo still rotating above the table. Worlds falling. People kneeling. A crusade spreading across the quadrant with the speed and inevitability of a quantum plague. We need to understand what we're fighting, he said finally. Sloane's right that this is an invasion. But Picard's right that we can't fight it with assassination. The priors are symptoms, not the disease. The disease is the Ori themselves, ascended beings using their power to enslave mortals. We need to cut them off from their power source. Worshippers, Kira breathed. The priors kept saying the Ori are all-powerful. What if that power comes from the faith of their followers? Like some kind of energy transfer? Worf nodded slowly. If that is true, then killing converts would be as effective as killing priors. More so. Which we're not doing, Sisko said firmly. But if we can prove to people that the Ori are false gods, that they're using them, not saving them, maybe we can stop the conversions. Sloane smiled without humor. And how exactly do you disprove a god who can resurrect the dead? Before anyone could answer, the station shuddered. Red alert klaxons blared. O'Brien's voice crackled over the comm. Captain to Ops. We've got incoming. They ran. The view screen showed something impossible. Through the Stargate, ships were emerging, massive vessels with hull designs that looked organic, grown rather than built. Their weapons charged with energy that made the station's shields scream in protest. Ori warships, Sloane said. We knew they'd come eventually. But Sisko wasn't looking at the ships. He was looking at what came through after them, Q, floating in space without a suit, arms crossed, watching the chaos with obvious satisfaction. Q materialized in Ops with his characteristic flash, settling into Sisko's chair with insufferable ease. Enjoying the show, Benjamin? I thought the warships were a nice touch. Really raises the stakes, don't you think? Sisko ignored him, focused on the tactical display. 4 Ori warships had positioned themselves in a perimeter around Deep Space Nine, their weapons charged but not firing. Waiting. The largest vessel, a cathedral-like structure of interlocking rings, sat directly between the station and Bajorans. Shields holding at 70%, Worf reported. But sir, their weapons are generating energy signatures that match the prior's abilities. If they fire, they won't, Q interrupted. Not yet. The Ori prefer conversion to destruction. They want your worship, not your corpses. Well, mostly. They're flexible when it comes to unbelievers. Picard stepped forward, his voice ice. Q, you've crossed a line. Even for you this is… What? Educational? Illuminating? Q stood, spreading his arms theatrically. Oh, Jean-Luc, don't be so dramatic. You've faced the Borg. You've dealt with temporal paradoxes. You've even survived my little tests. But you've never faced beings who can actually prove they're gods. The Ori don't make claims, they demonstrate. And unlike your prophets, Benjamin, they don't hide in wormholes waiting to be consulted. They act. Why? Sisko demanded. Why bring them here? Q's expression shifted, something almost sincere flickering beneath his usual mockery. Because the Federation has spent centuries congratulating itself on tolerance, diversity, infinite combinations. But you've never been tested by faith that has teeth. Your secularism works beautifully when gods are myths or mysterious entities who barely interact with mortals. But what happens when the gods are real, provably powerful, and demand submission? Do your principles survive? Or do you become exactly what you claim to oppose, exterminators of belief? A transmission interrupted them. The view screen shifted to show the interior of the Ori command ship. A prior, older than Damaris, his robes more ornate, stood before an altar wreathed in flame. I am Prior Nikera, voice of the Ori in this realm. We have observed your resistance with patience, but the Ori's patience is not infinite. You have 1 hour to choose, accept origin and ascend to enlightenment, or face the judgment of the gods you have denied. We're not interested in your religion, Sisko said. We respect your right to practice your faith, but we won't be coerced into. Nikera raised his hand. On the view screen, Bajorans rotated into view. The faithful on this world have shown us great devotion. 20 million souls have embraced origin in the first day. As reward for their faith, we shall deliver them from the false prophets who have misled them for so long. The celestial temple, the wormhole, suddenly flared. Not with its usual blue-white radiance, but with sickly golden light. Energy poured from the Ori ship, targeting the wormhole's event horizon. Kira's console erupted in warnings. Benjamin, they're attacking the wormhole! The prophets! The wormhole convulsed, its stable geometry fracturing. From inside, Sisko felt something he never experienced, the prophet's pain. They existed outside linear time, perceiving all moments simultaneously, but the Ori's assault was forcing them into temporal coherence, making them experience suffering sequentially, like mortals. Stop this! Sisko shouted at the view screen. You're attacking beings who have never threatened you. They are false gods leading your people astray, Nikera said calmly. The Book of Origin is clear, no gods before the Ori. We offer the prophets a choice. Join us in enlightenment, or be destroyed. They have 1 hour, as do you. The transmission ended. Q applauded slowly. Wonderful. A holy war between non-corporeal entities. This should be fascinating. Sisko grabbed Q by his uniform collar, slamming him against the wall. End this. Now. Close the Stargate, send the Ori back, fix what you've broken. Q didn't resist, but his smile remained. I can't. You're omnipotent. I'm also bound by certain rules. The Continuum has strict prohibitions about interfering with other omnipotent species. The Ori are ascended, not quite at our level, but close enough that direct intervention would trigger a war between dimensions. Even I don't want that. So this, Benjamin, is entirely up to you mortals. No Q to save you. No Deus Ex Machina. Just flesh and blood against beings who transcended mortality millennia ago. Picard pulled Sisko back. He's telling the truth. The Continuum won't interfere. Which means we're on our own. Not entirely. Sloane had been silent, watching, calculating. Now he stepped forward with a PADD. While you've been posturing, I've been analyzing. The Ori ships are powerful, but they're not invincible. They're channeling energy from another dimension, presumably from the faith of their followers. Cut that connection, and they're just ships. Powerful ships, but destroyable. And how do you propose we cut them off from an entire galaxy of worshippers? Kira demanded. We don't. We target the priors on this side of the Stargate. 200 enhanced humans spreading the faith. Without them actively converting people and performing miracles, the flow of worship energy decreases. The ships weaken. We destroy them, collapse the Stargate, problem solved. That brings us back to genocide, Picard said. No, it brings us back to mathematics, Sloane countered. 200 priors versus trillions. I'm not suggesting we kill converts. I'm suggesting we eliminate the infection vectors before the disease becomes terminal. Ross stepped between them. Gentlemen, we don't have time for philosophical debates. We have 57 minutes before the Ori attack the prophets. And probably us. I need solutions, not theories. Dax looked up from her console, her spots darkening with concentration. Benjamin, there might be another option. The prophets exist outside time. If they can perceive the Ori's attack coming, they can also perceive us asking for help. But they won't intervene unless it serves their purpose, protecting Bajorans, protecting you. If we can convince them the Ori threaten their interests. You want the emissary to petition the prophets to fight our war, Worf said. I want the emissary to ask the prophets to defend themselves, Dax corrected. The Ori are attacking the celestial temple. That makes this the prophets' fight as much as ours. Sisko looked at the wormhole on the view screen, still pulsing with corrupted energy. Entering it now, while under assault, could kill him. The prophets might not even be capable of communication in their current state. But the alternative was watching them die. And with them, Byer's faith, his role as emissary, and possibly the Quadrant's last hope against beings who could prove divinity with miracles. How long do I have? He asked. 54 minutes, Kira said quietly. Q leaned against the tactical console, watching Sisko with uncharacteristic intensity. This is the moment, Benjamin. When you have to choose between your duty as a Starfleet captain and your role as a religious figure. Between science and faith. Between what you know and what you believe. Choose carefully. The Ori are watching. The prophets are suffering. And I'm curious which version of yourself wins. Sisko turned to Ross. Admiral, I'm entering the Celestial Temple. If I'm not back in 45 minutes, implement whatever plan you think gives us the best chance. Even Sloane's, if necessary. Benjamin. Kira started. That's an order, Major. Prepare the Defiant. If the prophets can't help us, we're going to need everything we have. He walked toward the turbolift, feeling the weight of 2 galaxies on his shoulders. The runabout entered the wormhole, and Benjamin Sisko ceased to exist in linear time. Usually, the transition was smooth, a gentle dissolution of temporal boundaries as the prophets pulled his consciousness into their realm. But now the celestial temple writhed like a living thing in agony. Golden energy from the Ori ships infected the blue-white Verteron streams, creating ruptures in the dimensional fabric. Sisko felt himself fragmenting across multiple time frames simultaneously. He was on the Saratoga watching his wife die. He was holding newborn Jake in the delivery room. He was standing in ops during the Dominion invasion. He was here, now, desperately trying to reach beings who experienced all moments at once but were being forced into sequential suffering. Prophets! He shouted into the chaos. I need to speak with you. The fragmentation stopped. He stood in the white void that served as their meeting place, except it wasn't white anymore. Cracks of gold spread across the emptiness like infection through tissue. The prophet who usually took the form of his mother appeared, but her image flickered unstable. The Sisko is damaged, she said, but her voice carried pain beneath the usual detachment. The Ori are attacking you, Sisko said. You need to defend yourselves. We do not understand attack. We exist in all moments. The linear concept of assault is... She stopped, convulsing. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. We understand now. The beings from the other place force us into their linearity. They make us experience pain as you do. Sequential. Building. Unbearable. Another prophet appeared, taking Jake's form. They demand we submit. Join their ascension. Acknowledge them as superior. And if you refuse? Sisko asked, though he knew the answer. We will be made to cease. Not destroyed. We have no corporeal form to destroy. But compressed. Forced into linear existence, and imprisoned within our own temple. We would experience eternity as suffering. A fate worse than your death. The white void shuddered. Through the cracks, Sisko glimpsed something vast and terrible. The Ori themselves, beings of pure energy shaped by the faith of billions, pouring their collective will into breaking the Prophet's nonlinear nature. Fight back, Sisko urged. You have power. You've existed for millions of years. You can. We have never fought, the Prophet said. We exist. We observe. We protect Bajorans because it serves the temple. But we do not comprehend conflict as you do. The Ori have learned warfare across millennia of crusades. They know how to hurt beings like us. We do not know how to hurt them. Sisko felt the desperation rising. Then learn. I'll teach you. Humans have fought gods before, or at least beings who claim to be gods. We've found their weaknesses, exploited their arrogance. The Ori can be beaten. The Prophet Jake tilted his head. You wish us to become like them? Aggressive. Linear. Diminished? I wish you to survive. A third prophet materialized, wearing the face of Jennifer Sisko, his dead wife. The form was cruel, calculated to destabilize him emotionally. The Sisko wishes us to fight because the Sisko fears. But we do not fear. We exist beyond fear. Beyond death. The Ori cannot truly destroy us, only transform us. Perhaps transformation is the nature of existence. That's surrender, Sisko said. You're talking about surrender. We are talking about inevitability. The linear beings who worship the Ori number in the billions. Their faith generates energy that flows into the Ori, making them stronger with each prayer, each converted soul. You cannot stop faith, Sisko. Even your Federation, with all its science and reason, cannot compete with gods who answer prayers. The temple shuddered violently. Sisko was thrown across the white void, landing hard against nothing. When he looked up, the cracks had widened. Through them, he saw the Ori themselves, not the priors, not the ships, but the actual ascended beings. They were luminous, beautiful, terrible, and they were laughing. Prophets of the false temple. A voice resonated through the dimensional space, shaking reality itself. Your time has ended. Submit to origin, or be cast into linear torment for eternity. Choose now. The prophets surrounding Sisko flickered, their forms becoming translucent. They were weakening. The assault was working. Don't give in, Sisko pleaded. Please. Bajorans needs you. I need you. You brought me here for a purpose. You said I had tasks to perform, experiences to facilitate. If you surrender now, all of that ends. Everything you've guided me toward, every intervention you made, it becomes meaningless. The Prophet Mother looked at him with something approximating pity. The Sisko still believes in purpose. In meaning. In linear causality. We brought you here because your existence created probabilities we found interesting. But the Ori have shown us that even probabilities can be overwritten. They have conquered thousands of galaxies. What is one wormhole to them? It's everything to Bajorans. Sisko shouted. It's everything to me. Silence. Then, slowly, the Prophet Jake spoke. The Sisko experiences love for the beings of Bajorans. The Sisko would sacrifice himself to preserve their faith. This is admirable. But insufficient. The Ori offer Bajorans tangible rewards. Healing. Resurrection. Visible divinity. We offer only silence and mystery. In a choice between gods who perform miracles and gods who watch from afar, which would you choose? The question hit Sisko like a physical blow. Because the Prophet was right. How could the Bajoran faith compete with the Ori's demonstrable power? The prophets had sent the orbs, provided cryptic guidance, occasionally intervened in ways that could be rationalized as coincidence. The Ori resurrected the dead. You're not just gods to Bajorans, Sisko said quietly. You're their history, their identity, their hope. The Ori offer power, yes. But you offer something more important, freedom. The prophets never demanded worship, never forced obedience. You let Bajorans choose their own path. That's worth more than all the miracles in the universe. The prophets were silent for a long moment. Then the temple stabilized. Just slightly. The cracks stopped spreading. The Sisko presents an interesting perspective, the Prophet Mother said. The Ori's strength comes from enforced devotion. Our strength, we do not know our strength. We have never needed it. But perhaps the Sisko is correct. Perhaps there is power in choice. In freedom. Then use it, Sisko urged. Show the Ori that forced worship is no match for faith freely given. The Prophet Jake looked at him with alien eyes. To do this, we would need to act. To intervene. To become linear. Even temporarily. The cost would be immense. I know. But the alternative is extinction. Another shudder. The Ori were pressing their attack, sensing weakness. The Prophet Jennifer stepped forward. If we fight, we require an anchor. A being who exists in both realms, corporeal and non-corporeal. A bridge between linear time and eternal existence. Sisko felt cold understanding wash over him. Me. You need me. The emissary has always been the bridge. But this would require more than guidance. We would need to channel our power through your linear existence. The experience would be damaging. You may not survive with your sanity intact. You would experience infinity compressed into mortal perception. And if I refuse? The Ori win? The temple falls. Bajorans converts. And the Federation faces an enemy it cannot comprehend, let alone defeat. Sisko thought of Jake. Of Cassidy. Of the life he'd built despite being thrust into the role of emissary. But he also thought of Bajorans, of the millions who'd placed their faith in the prophets, of the quadrant that would fall beneath the Ori crusade if this failed. Do it, he said. The prophets moved as one. Their forms dissolved into pure energy, flowing into Sisko like fire through his veins. He screamed, a sound that echoed across dimensions, across time itself. His consciousness expanded, touching every moment of his existence simultaneously, seeing infinite possibilities collapse into singular certainty. And through him, the prophets learned to fight. Using your captain as a template for linear aggression. It's actually quite elegant, if horrifically painful for everyone involved. Can you stop this? Kira asked. I could. But I won't. This is exactly what I wanted to see, whether beings of pure thought could adapt when faced with beings of pure faith. The Ori have forgotten what it's like to be challenged. The prophets never knew. Now both are learning. Q paused. Though I'll admit, I didn't expect the prophets to use Benjamin quite so thoroughly. That's going to leave scars. On the view screen, Prior Nikara's ship attempted to flee, but tendrils of blue-white energy wrapped around it like fingers. The prophet energy pulsed, and the ship's hull began to phase, existing in multiple time frames simultaneously, aging and de-aging in rapid succession until the structural integrity failed. The warship broke apart in silence. Incoming transmission from Bajorans, O'Brien said. It's Prior Damaris. The view screen shifted. The Prior who'd first emerged from the Stargate stood in the plaza where he performed miracles, but now the crowd behind him was confused, frightened. His milky eyes flickered with something that might have been doubt. The Ori have withdrawn their presence, Damaris said, his voice lacking its earlier certainty. The power I wielded, the gifts I bestowed, they are diminished. The gods are silent. What is happening? Kira understood before anyone else. The prophets aren't just defending themselves. They're cutting the Ori off from this galaxy. Severing the worship energy connection. Impossible, Sloane said from his position near tactical. The Ori have billions of followers in their home galaxy. Losing a few 100,000 converts here shouldn't. It's not about the numbers, Dax interrupted, realization dawning. It's about the gateway. The Stargate is the connection point. The prophets are using it as a choke point, filtering the energy flow. Benjamin's linear perspective is showing them how. You can't fight everywhere at once, so you fight at the bottleneck. The wormhole convulsed one final time. A shockwave of chronometric energy exploded outward, washing over the Ori's ships, the station, Bajorans itself. When it cleared, the wormhole had returned to its normal configuration, stable, serene, impossibly beautiful. And the Stargate on the station's promenade went dark. The gateways closed. O'Brien reported. All power readings are offline. It's just a ring now. Inert. On Bajorans, Prior Damaris collapsed to his knees, his staff clattering on the cobblestones. The milky whiteness of his eyes faded, revealing normal human pupils beneath. Around him, the converted masses looked at each other in confusion, as if waking from a dream. The Ori, Damaris whispered. They're gone. I can't feel them. The power, the certainty, everything is just gone. A runabout emerged from the wormhole, tumbling end over end, completely unpowered. Kira's heart seized. Tractor beam! Get him aboard now! The runabout materialized in the docking bay 30 seconds later. Kira was already running, Dax and Ross close behind. The hatch was sealed from the inside, standard emergency protocol when life support failed. O'Brien arrived with cutting tools. They found Benjamin Sisko crumpled against the pilot's chair, unconscious, blood trickling from his nose and ears. But he was breathing. Medical emergency! Kira shouted into her comm badge. Get Bashir to docking bay 5 immediately! Dr. Bashir arrived within minutes, his medical tricorder already scanning. His expression went from concerned to horrified in seconds. His neural pathways are firing in non-sequential patterns. Parts of his brain are experiencing time non-linearly. I've never seen anything like this. Get him to the infirmary, now. As they loaded Sisko onto an anti-grav stretcher, his eyes opened, but they weren't entirely his anymore. When he spoke, multiple voices echoed beneath his own. The Ori have been expelled from this realm. The gateway is closed. But the converted remain. The faithful who believed. What becomes of them? Kira Neri's first officer, believer, doubter. Benjamin? Kira whispered. We are Benjamin. We are the prophets. We are the bridge. The separation is difficult. His eyes closed again. Tell Jake his father will return. Eventually. We hope. Then he was unconscious again, leaving Kira holding his hand, terrified of what the prophets had done to save themselves, and what it had cost the man she'd followed into hell more times than she could count. In the wardroom, Picard stood with Ross and Sloane, watching Bajorans on the view screen. The Priors were powerless now, just enhanced humans cut off from their gods. But the people who'd converted, millions of them, still remembered the miracles, still felt the echo of divine certainty. The Ori are gone, Picard said quietly. But origin remains. We've won the battle, but the war for these people's minds is just beginning. And Section 31's solution? Ross asked, looking at Sloane. Sloane deactivated his nanovirus schematics. Unnecessary now. The Priors are harmless without their connection to the Ori. We can deprogram them, reintegrate them into society. Or we can execute them as war criminals. Your choice, Admiral. Neither, Picard said firmly. We treat them as victims of coercion. As casualties of a conflict they didn't choose. Ross nodded slowly. Agreed. But Captain, we need to address the larger issue. The Stargate is closed, but it still exists. Q put it here, and Q can reactivate it anytime he wants. We're one omnipotent being's whim away from this happening again. As if summoned by his name, Q appeared in the center of the room, applauding slowly. Bravo. Truly bravo. The prophets learned to fight. Benjamin sacrificed his sanity for the greater good. The Federation resisted the temptation to commit genocide. You've all passed with flying colors. His smile faded. Almost all of you. He looked directly at Sloane. You were ready to kill 200 people to solve a problem. Efficient. Logical. Monstrous. The Ori would have loved you. You think exactly like them. Power justifies action. The greater good excuses any atrocity. I do what's necessary, Sloane said evenly. Yes. You do. And that's why you're dangerous. Q snapped his fingers. Sloane vanished. Where did you send him? Ross demanded. Nowhere fatal. Just instructive. He'll be back when he's learned the difference between necessary and easy. Q turned to Picard. As for you, Jean-Luc, I'm impressed. You held your principles even when the universe gave you every reason to abandon them. Get rid of the Stargate, Q, Picard said. This experiment is over. Q considered this. Then, surprisingly, nodded. You're right. It is. The Stargate is gone. Scattered across subspace in a million pieces. The Ori can't return to this galaxy. But the people who believed in them, they're your problem now. Good luck explaining to millions of converts that their gods were false when they personally witnessed miracles. He vanished. In the infirmary, Sisko stirred, whispering words in a language that hadn't existed until moments ago, a hybrid of Bajoran scripture and Ori prayer, filtered through prophet consciousness. Kira held his hand and prayed to gods she no longer entirely trusted. 3 days after the battle, Benjamin Sisko remained in a medically induced coma. Dr. Bashir had tried everything: neurosuppressants, cortical stimulators, even experimental treatments using Trilgion-Terra techniques to separate multiple consciousnesses. Nothing worked. Sisko's brain continued firing in nonlinear patterns, experiencing past, present, and future simultaneously. The man who'd served as a bridge between mortal and immortal consciousness couldn't find his way back to purely linear existence. Jake Sisko sat beside his father's biobed, holding a hand that occasionally twitched with chronometric aftershocks. Kira stood nearby, watching the readings with growing despair. He's not getting better, Jake said quietly. It wasn't a question. No, Bashir admitted, adjusting another medication dosage. His neural pathways have been fundamentally altered. Parts of his consciousness are still connected to the prophets. He's experiencing time the way they do, all moments at once. For a linear being it's like trying to watch every Hollywood ever made simultaneously. The human mind isn't built for it. So what are you saying? He's going to be like this forever? I'm saying I don't know how to fix this. Bashir's frustration was evident. This is beyond medicine. Beyond science. He needs the prophets to release him, and they're not responding to any attempts at communication. Kira's comm badge chirped. Major, this is Odo. We have a situation on the promenade. You need to see this. She exchanged glances with Jake. Stay with him. I'll be back. The promenade had become a theological battlefield. On one side, Videk Porta stood with a group of traditional Bajoran faithful, holding orbs and reciting prayers to the prophets. On the other side, former Ori converts, still numbering in the thousands on Bajorans alone, knelt before makeshift altars, reciting passages from the Book of Origin despite having no priors to lead them, no connection to the Ori themselves. Between them, Prior Damaris stood alone, looking lost. The emissary fought for us, Porta was saying, her voice carrying across the crowd. The prophets defended the celestial temple against the false gods. This proves Origin was a lie, a corruption. Return to the true faith. The Ori performed miracles. Someone shouted from the convert's side. They healed the sick, raised the dying. The prophets only watch. They never help. The prophets saved us from conquest. The prophets used the emissary and destroyed his mind. What kind of gods sacrificed their own prophet? Kira pushed through the crowd toward Damaris. Up close, the former prior looked diminished. Still enhanced by Ori modifications, but hollow, like a vessel emptied of purpose. Prior Damaris, she said carefully. Or should I call you something else now? I don't know what I am anymore. His voice was raw. For 3 years, I served the Ori with absolute certainty. I felt their presence every moment. Their power flowed through me like sunlight. I knew that Origin was truth. And then in one instant it was gone. The certainty vanished. The power disappeared. I'm just Marcus again. Marcus Chen from Earth, who volunteered for ascension and lost everything that made me human in exchange for godhood I no longer possess. You were human once? Kira hadn't expected that. We all were. The Priors. We came from a Federation colony that made contact with the Ori decades ago. We converted, underwent the enhancement process, became missionaries for Origin. I believed I was saving people. He laughed bitterly. And maybe I was. The healings were real. The resurrections happened. The Ori gave us power to perform genuine miracles. How do you deprogram someone from a religion that actually worked? Kira had no answer. The argument between Bajoran faithful and Ori converts escalated. Someone threw something. Security moved in, but Odo signaled them to hold position. Arresting people for religious disagreement would only inflame tensions. Then the crowd fell silent. Captain Picard walked onto the promenade, flanked by Worf and Admiral Ross. But all eyes fixed on the figure behind them. A Klingon warrior in full ceremonial armor, carrying a bat'leth that looked ancient even by Klingon standards. Chancellor Gowron himself had come to Deep Space Nine. I have heard tales of gods who demand worship, Gowron announced, his voice echoing through the promenade. Gods who threaten mortals with plague and suffering unless they kneel. This is not divinity. This is cowardice dressed in holy robes. The Klingon delegation behind him struck their weapons against their armor in agreement, a thunderous sound that made several converts flinch. The Ori claimed to be all-powerful, Gowron continued. Yet they were driven back by beings who do not demand worship, who do not threaten, who simply exist. This tells me everything I need to know about the difference between true power and the illusion of it. Your Ori are false. Your origin is a lie. And any Klingon who considers converting to this religion of cowards will be expelled from the Empire. Picard stepped forward before the situation could deteriorate further. Chancellor Gowron's position is noted, though the Federation respects all faiths and the right of individuals to choose their own beliefs. However, we must address a practical concern. 27 Federation worlds have populations that converted to Origin. Millions of people who witnessed genuine miracles and now find themselves without the gods they believed in. What would you have us do? Porta challenged. Pretend the Ori never existed? Ignore that they offered tangible proof of divinity while the prophets remained silent and distant? The prophets are not silent, a voice said. Everyone turned. Sisko stood at the entrance to the promenade, leaning heavily on Jake for support. His eyes flickered between normal brown and the milky white of prophet consciousness. When he spoke, harmonics echoed beneath his words, the prophets speaking through their emissary. We have been learning, Sisko said, each word clearly requiring immense effort. The Ori taught us that power without choice is tyranny. That forced devotion corrupts both the worshipper and the worshipped. We have existed for millennia believing non-interference was wisdom. Perhaps it was merely indifference. He took a shaking step forward. Bashir tried to intervene, but Sisko waved him off. The Bajoran people have suffered much. They place faith in beings who rarely respond, who offer cryptic guidance instead of clear answers, who send orbs but not comfort. The Ori offered certainty, healing, visible proof of divine love. It is understandable that some would choose that over our silence. Porta approached cautiously. Emissary, are you saying the prophets were wrong? We are saying we have learned from our mistakes. The Ori forced us to confront what we are, and what we could become. We do not wish to be like them. But we also recognize that faith requires more than mystery. Sisko's hand rose, trembling. Golden light, not Ori gold, but the blue-white radiance of the prophets, gathered in his palm. It spread outward, touching the former Ori converts. Their expressions shifted from confusion to wonder as old injuries healed, chronic pains faded, the sick found themselves whole. The prophets can perform miracles, Sisko said. We choose not to, because miracles create dependence. But we recognize that sometimes, mortals need proof that they are not alone. Consider this a gesture of good faith. The healing light faded. Sisko collapsed, caught by Jake before he hit the deck. But the damage, or perhaps the healing, was done. The former Ori converts looked at each other, at Videk Porta, at the space where divine light had been. The theological lines had blurred. Damaris knelt not in worship, but in exhaustion. What do we do now? We believed in gods who used us. Now we're being offered gods who, what? Care? How do we trust that? You don't, Kira said quietly. Not immediately. Trust is earned. Faith is chosen. The prophets have shown you they can heal. Now you have to decide if that's enough. If guidance without coercion is better than certainty through force. Garan grunted. Still sounds like gods to me. Still sounds like weakness. Respectfully, Chancellor, Picard said, the Klingon Empire has its own form of faith. Estiovilkor. Dishonored dead sent to Gr Thor. You believe warriors who died gloriously joined Kallus in the afterlife. Is that so different from what we're discussing? It is completely different. We earn our place in Estiovilkor through deeds, not prayer. Garan paused. Though I concede your point. Even Klingon have myths we choose to believe. As security helped Sisko to the infirmary, as the crowd slowly dispersed, Kira noticed something. The two groups, traditional Bajorans and former Ori converts, weren't separating as cleanly as before. People were talking, questioning, sharing their experiences. Perhaps that was the real answer. Not conversion or reconversion, but dialogue. The Borg cube materialized at the edge of the Bajoran system without warning. Every alarm on Deep Space Nine screamed simultaneously. Worf's tactical display showed the distinctive geometry of a Borg vessel, 2 kilometers per side, bristling with weapons, shields already adapted to Federation phaser frequencies. Red alert! Kira barked. All hands to battle stations. Get the Defiant powered up and... Wait! Admiral Ross held up a hand, studying the sensor readings with unusual calm. They're not moving. No weapons charged. No tractor beams. They're just sitting there. Picard stepped to the view screen, his face pale but composed. Years after Wolf 359, after his assimilation, the sight of a Borg cube still triggered memories he'd rather forget. Open a channel. The view screen shifted to show the Borg cube's interior, a nightmare landscape of alcoves, conduits, and drones moving with mechanical precision. But at the center stood something unprecedented. A single Borg drone, disconnected from its alcove, speaking independently. We are the Borg. We have come to negotiate. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. The Borg don't negotiate, Worf said flatly. They assimilate. Correction, the drone responded. The Borg have assimilated 23,406 species. We have encountered only 2 phenomena we could not assimilate. Species 8472 from fluidic space, and now, the Ori Priors. We require clarification. Ross exchanged glances with Picard. You tried to assimilate a Prior? Affirmative. Prior Nikara's vessel was damaged during the Prophet engagement. We tractored his body before the ship's destruction. Assimilation protocols were initiated. The process failed. The drone stepped aside, and the view screen showed something that made even Bashir, watching from medical, inhale sharply. In an alcove, surrounded by Borg technology attempting and failing to integrate with his physiology, was Prior Nikara. His body convulsed as nanoprobes tried to rewrite his cellular structure, but each time they succeeded, golden energy would erupt from within, destroying the Borg modifications and restoring his enhanced human form. The Prior's enhancements resist assimilation. The drone continued. More significantly, his consciousness cannot be incorporated into the collective. When we attempted neural integration, we accessed memories of the Ori, ascended beings existing outside corporeal form. The collective experienced disruption. 17 drones disconnected. 3 alcoves exploded. The hive mind fractured temporarily. You're saying the Prior's knowledge of the Ori corrupted the collective? Dax asked, fascinated despite the horror. Corruption is an imprecise term. The Ori represent a form of existence the collective cannot categorize. Ascended consciousness. Non-corporeal divinity. These concepts introduced variables our hive mind could not process. We require information to restore stability and determine if the Ori represent a threat to Borg perfection. Kira leaned toward Ross. They're afraid. The Borg are actually afraid of something they can't assimilate. Captain Picard? The Borg drone said. You have experience with both Borg assimilation and subsequent liberation. You understand the transition between individual and collective consciousness. You have also interfaced with the prophets through your association with the emissary. We require your expertise to extract usable data from Prior Nikera without further corrupting the collective. Absolutely not, Picard said immediately. I won't help you assimilate anyone, Prior or otherwise. We do not seek assimilation. We seek information. The Prior possesses knowledge of ascended beings, dimensional travel, and energy manipulation beyond our current understanding. This knowledge would elevate the collective. However, traditional assimilation methods have proven inadequate. We propose an exchange. We provide tactical data on Ori weaknesses discovered during our failed assimilation attempt. You provide methodology for safe information extraction. Ross started to object, but Picard held up a hand. What weaknesses? The drone tilted its head, processing. Prior Nikara's enhanced physiology is dependent on an external power source. The Ori themselves, channeling energy through a dimensional link. When this link was severed by the prophets, his abilities diminished but did not cease entirely. Analysis indicates the enhancement process fundamentally altered his cellular structure to generate and store Ori-type energy independently. He is no longer fully human, but also no longer fully dependent on the Ori. So the Priors are hybrids, Bashir said from the medical bay, listening intently. Part human biology, part energy-based enhancement. That's why your nanoprobes can't rewrite them. You're trying to assimilate something that exists partially outside normal spacetime. Correct. Additionally, the Prior's memories contain strategic intelligence. The Ori have conquered 14 galaxies over the past 10,000 years. They employ a consistent methodology, send Priors to perform miracles, convert populations through faith-based coercion, then use the worship energy to empower warships and additional Priors. The cycle is self-sustaining. However, we have identified a vulnerability. The view screen shifted to show complex energy flow diagrams. The Ori require worshippers to generate power. But they also require belief. When Prior Nikara's connection to the Ori was severed, his absolute certainty wavered. This wavering created cascading doubt that weakened his enhancements. Conclusion: the Prior's powers are maintained not only by external Ori energy, but by their own internal conviction. Destroy faith, and you destroy function. Kira felt sick. You're describing psychological warfare. Breaking people's belief systems to weaken them. We are describing tactical efficiency. The Federation has already implemented this strategy inadvertently, allowing former Ori converts to witness prophet miracles introduce doubt into Origin's exclusivity. This doubt spreads mimetically through social networks. Given sufficient time and counter-evidence, Origin will collapse as a functional belief system in this galaxy. Picard studied the drone carefully. You've told us this information freely. What do you actually want from us? Access to the prophets. The request was so audacious that for a moment, no one responded. The prophets are non-corporeal, non-linear entities who successfully repelled the Ori, beings the collective cannot assimilate. The drone continued. Understanding how the prophets function would allow us to develop assimilation protocols for ascended species. This represents the next stage of Borg evolution. We propose a trade. We release Prior Nikera into Federation custody unharmed. In exchange, Captain Sisko facilitates collective communication with the prophets. No, Kira said instantly. Absolutely not. You want to assimilate the prophets. Assimilation is inevitable. However, we recognize that direct assault on the celestial temple would result in collective destruction based on demonstrated prophet defensive capabilities. We seek peaceful integration. Knowledge exchange. The prophets possess understanding of nonlinear existence. The collective possesses understanding of efficiency and order. Together, we could achieve perfection through tyranny. Picard interrupted coldly. I've heard this speech before. The answer is no. The drone paused, processing. Unfortunate. The collective will pursue alternative methods of obtaining this information. Prior Nicara will be retained for continued study. We have learned from this encounter that faith-based phenomena represent a gap in Borg knowledge. This gap will be filled. You'll kill him, Bashir said. Your experiments will destroy what's left of his humanity. Incorrect. We will preserve his biological functions indefinitely. His consciousness, however, may experience fragmentation as we systematically isolate and extract memory engrams. The process is not designed for comfort. Worf's hand moved toward weapons. We should destroy them. 1 cube. We have the Defiant, the Enterprise is in sensor range. And they'll adapt? Picard said bitterly. They always adapt. And any attack would justify collective retaliation against Federation space. On the view screen, Prior Nikara's eyes suddenly opened. Despite the Borg technology piercing his body, despite the nanoprobes fighting his cellular structure, he looked directly at the camera with desperate clarity. Captain Picard? He gasped, his voice distorted by Borg vocal modifications attempting to integrate his speech patterns. The Book of Origin teaches that even the fallen can find redemption. I served false gods. I spread a religion of coercion. But I also healed thousands. I gave hope to the dying. That must count for something. Please, don't let me become this. Don't let the Borg turn me into a weapon against everything I once believed, however misguided that belief was. The plea hung in the air. Ross looked at Picard. Captain, I can't order you to negotiate with the Borg. But I also can't order you not to. This is your call. Picard closed his eyes, remembering what it felt like to have his individuality stripped away, to become Locutus, to speak words he didn't mean in service of a collective he despised. Then he opened them, decision made. I'll go aboard your vessel, he said to the drone. Alone. Unarmed. I'll examine Prior Nicara and determine if there's a way to safely extract the information you seek without destroying his mind. But I won't facilitate contact with the prophets, and I won't help you develop assimilation protocols for ascended beings. Take it or leave it. The drone processed this. Acceptable. Transport when ready. As Picard moved toward the transporter room, Worf fell and stepped beside him. Captain, I cannot allow you to. You can and you will, Commander. That's an order. Picard's voice softened. If this goes wrong, at least it's only one life lost. If we refuse and the Borg decide to take what they want by force. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Moments later, Picard materialized aboard the cube, surrounded by drones and the ever-present hum of the collective. The drone that had spoken approached. Your designation? Jean-Luc Picard. Captain? Formerly Locutus of Borg. He met the drone's gaze without flinching. Take me to Prior Nicara. And pray to whatever gods the Borg don't believe in that we find a solution before this situation spirals further out of control. Picard stood before Prior Nikara's alcove, watching nanoprobes writhe beneath the man's skin like parasites searching for purchase. Every few seconds, golden energy would flare, destroying the invaders, only for new probes to regenerate and begin the cycle again. The Prior's face was locked in a rictus of agony, not physical pain, but something worse. The existential horror of being trapped between two incompatible forms of existence. How long has he been like this? Picard asked. 47 hours, 12 minutes, the drone responded. The cycle continues indefinitely. His enhanced physiology prevents both successful assimilation and death. He exists in perpetual transition. Picard felt rage building in his chest, the same rage he'd felt when he'd finally broken free of the collective's control and realized what had been done to him. This is torture. This is analysis. Torture implies intent to cause suffering. We seek only to understand. The result is the same. Picard moved closer to the alcove, ignoring the drones that tracked his movement. Prior Nikera, can you hear me? The Prior's milky eyes focused with effort. Captain. Picard. The man who was Borg and became human again. Is there a way back for me too? I don't know. But I'm going to try. Picard turned to the drone. I need access to your medical database. Specifically, the failed assimilation records for species 8472 and any other beings who resisted integration. That information could be used to develop anti-Borg technology. That information is my price for cooperation. You want my expertise? This is how I acquire the context I need. The drone hesitated, or rather, the collective hesitated through the drone. After a moment, a neural interface extended from the wall. Connect. The data will be transmitted directly to your neural cortex. The experience may trigger traumatic memories of your time as Locutus. I'm aware of the risk. Picard placed his hands on the interface nodes, and information flooded his consciousness. He saw species 8472, tripedal beings from fluidic space whose biology was so fundamentally different that Borg nanoprobes dissolved on contact. He saw failed assimilation attempts on energy-based lifeforms, on beings that existed in quantum superposition, on creatures whose consciousness operated across multiple dimensions simultaneously. And he saw the Borg's desperate attempts to overcome these limitations, experiments that had killed thousands of drones, corrupted entire cubes, even fractured subcollectives. The Borg's pursuit of perfection was built on a foundation of corpses. When Picard pulled away from the interface, his hands were shaking. But he had what he needed. Prior Nikara's enhancements operate on a principle similar to species 8472's bioelectric field, he said. The Ori fundamentally rewrote his cellular structure to channel extra-dimensional energy. Your nanoprobes can't assimilate him because they're trying to integrate technology into biology. But his biology is the technology. You're attempting to reprogram something that has no distinction between hardware and software. Conclusion? You can't assimilate him. Not with current Borg methodology. You need to evolve nanoprobes that operate on a dimensional level, not just a cellular one. And even if you succeeded, the result wouldn't be Borg. It would be something else entirely. The drone processed this. Hypothesis accepted. However, the Prior still contains valuable knowledge. We require access to his memories without full assimilation. Propose an alternative method. Picard looked at Nikera, at the man trapped between human and something beyond human, and made a decision that would have horrified his younger self, the self that still believed in absolute moral certainties. A voluntary neural interface. Let him choose to share his knowledge instead of taking it by force. The Ori taught him their philosophy, their history, their methods. If he willingly provides this information, you avoid the corruption that comes from forced assimilation. And he... Picard met Nikara's desperate gaze. He gets to retain his identity. His sense of self. The one thing the Ori took from him when they enhanced him, the one thing the Borg would take if you assimilated him. Let him be a person who makes a choice, instead of a resource to be exploited. Prior Nikera. The drone addressed him directly. Do you consent to voluntary information sharing with the collective? The Prior's laugh was bitter. What choice do I have? Stay here in eternal torment, or give you what you want and hope you keep your word? The Ori taught me that gods don't negotiate, they command. But you're not gods. You're just very efficient monsters. We are Borg. Efficiency is perfection. Monsters are inefficient. The drone extended a single neural connector toward Nikera. This interface will allow bilateral information exchange. You provide knowledge of Ori methodology. We provide freedom from the assimilation cycle. Captain Picard will monitor the exchange to ensure compliance with voluntary consent protocols. And if I refuse? Nikera asked. The cycle continues. Indefinitely. Nikera closed his eyes. When he opened them, resignation had replaced desperation. I spent 3 years telling people they had no choice, kneel or die. Origin or damnation. I became the thing I now despise. If sharing what I know prevents the Borg from inflicting that same false choice on others. He took a shaking breath. Do it. But Captain Picard stays. If I feel you taking more than I'm willing to give, he stops this. Agreed? The collective paused. Picard could almost sense the billions of minds evaluating the proposal, calculating efficiency versus risk. Finally, agreed. The neural connector interfaced with Nikara's temple. Picard watched the prior's expression shift, surprise, then wonder, then horror as information flowed both directions. The collective learned about the Ori, their ascension process, their galaxy-spanning crusades, their theological justifications for conquest. And Nikera learned what it meant to be Borg, the loss of individuality, the relentless pursuit of assimilation, the cold mathematics of perfection. Fascinating, Nikera whispered. We're the same. The Ori and the Borg. Both assimilate. Both promise perfection. Both destroy individuality in service of a collective consciousness. The only difference is you call it efficiency and we called it enlightenment. Inaccurate, the drone said. The Borg seek technological perfection. The Ori sought spiritual dominance. The destination is the same, everyone thinking identical thoughts, pursuing identical goals, stripped of choice. Nikara's voice grew stronger. I can feel your collective, and you know what I see? The same thing I saw in the Ori. Fear. You're both terrified of chaos, of unpredictability, of individual choice leading to outcomes you can't control. So you eliminate choice entirely. The information exchange accelerated. Picard saw sweat beading on Nikara's forehead as terabytes of data flowed through his consciousness. But something else was happening. The collective was changing. Drones across the cube began moving erratically. Alcoves flickered. The orderly hum of the hive mind developed dissonant harmonics. Disconnect him! Picard shouted. He's introducing the same corruption you experienced before. But the drone didn't respond. Couldn't respond. The collective was experiencing what Nikera had experienced when the prophets severed his connection to the Ori, existential doubt. The prior's memories of losing absolute certainty, of confronting the possibility that everything he believed was false, was spreading through the hive mind like a virus. Individual drones began disconnecting from their alcoves, looking around with confused awareness. The neural interface between Nikera and the collective surged with energy as billions of Borg minds simultaneously questioned their purpose. What have you done? Picard demanded. Nikera smiled. A genuine expression, free of Ori influence or Borg modification. I gave them the one thing neither the Ori nor the Borg can survive, doubt. The Ori fell when I stopped believing they were gods. The Borg will fracture when they stop believing perfection is achievable through assimilation. It's already happening, can't you feel it? The cube shuddered. Explosions rippled through distant sections as conflicting commands overloaded processing nodes. Drones wandered the corridors, some attacking each other, others simply standing motionless as their hive mind connection degraded. Captain Picard? One drone said, its voice carrying individual inflection for the first time. We are. I am uncertain. The collective shows me perfection, but prior Nikara's memories show me the cost. Which is true? Both, Picard said quietly. That's the burden of consciousness. Holding contradictory truths simultaneously and choosing which to act on. More drones began disconnecting, their expressions shifting from blank efficiency to confused awareness. The cube's power fluctuated wildly. We need to leave, Picard said, tapping his comm badge. Picard to Enterprise. 2 to beam directly to Sick. The transporter engaged, but the beam was corrupted. Picard and Nikera materialized in the Enterprise's transporter room fragmented, their molecular patterns held together by emergency stabilization protocols. Dr. Crusher was already scanning, her face pale. "You're both experiencing cellular destabilization." The Borg transporter tried to add nanoprobes during beam out, but Nikara's enhancements destroyed them mid-transport. "Jean-Luc, you were caught in the crossfire." Behind them, on the view screen, the Borg cube was tearing itself apart. Not from external attack, but from internal collapse. A collective couldn't function when individual drones questioned the fundamental premise of assimilation. 7 of 9, Picard said, naming the former Borg drone who served on Voyager. "If she's had experience with collective fragmentation." "Already contacted," Crusher said. "She's transmitted treatment protocols. You'll both survive." "But Jean-Luc, that cube, there are thousands of drones aboard, who are experiencing individuality for the first time in years. Decades. Some of them for centuries." Picard watched the cube's death spiral with mixed emotions. "We need to evacuate them before the warp core breaches." "The Borg won't thank you for it," Nikera said, his voice weak. "Some of them will beg to return to the collective. Individuality is terrifying when you've forgotten how to be yourself." "I know," Picard said, remembering his own desperate confusion after liberation. "But terror is better than slavery." Deep Space Nine's infirmary had become a philosophical battleground. Benjamin Sisko sat upright in his biobed, finally free of prophet interference but forever changed by the experience. Across from him, Luther Sloan, returned from wherever Q had sent him, looking exhausted and oddly humbled, delivered his Section 31 analysis with uncharacteristic uncertainty. 42 Federation worlds with significant Ori convert populations, Sloan reported. 27 priors in our custody, all powerless but still biologically enhanced. 1,600 former Borg drones rescued from the cube before it exploded, most of them psychologically traumatized by sudden individuality. And one Stargate that's supposedly destroyed but could be reassembled by any sufficiently motivated omnipotent being. He paused. Q created a mess that will take decades to resolve. And we still don't have a solution. Because there isn't one, Sisko said, his voice carrying harmonics that betrayed lingering prophet influence. You can't solve faith, Sloan. You can only coexist with it. Admiral Ross entered, followed by Picard and Gowron. The Klingon Chancellor looked disgusted by the entire situation. The Federation Council has reached a decision, Ross announced. Regarding the Ori converts and the former priors. Captain Picard, your recommendation was particularly influential. Picard nodded. The priors acted under what they genuinely believed was divine mandate. We can't prosecute people for spreading a religion they believed was true, even if that religion was coercive. As for the converts, they witnessed miracles, experienced healings, and made choices based on what they perceived as evidence. Treating them as victims of mass delusion would be both inaccurate and insulting. So we do nothing? Kira asked from her position near Sisko's bed. Let millions of people continue believing in gods who use them as power sources? We offer alternatives, Sisko said. The prophets have agreed, reluctantly, to be more active in Bajoran's spiritual life. Not performing miracles on demand, but providing clearer guidance. Engaging with faith instead of just observing it. They learn from the Ori that distance creates vulnerability. Gowron snorted. The Federation solves a religious invasion by making its gods more accessible. Pathetic. The Klingon solution would be simpler. Kill the priests, burn the temples, and remind people that they should rely on strength, not superstition. And yet, Picard said mildly, the Klingon Empire has an afterlife mythology, sacred texts, and rituals honoring Kahless. You judge others for faith while maintaining your own. Kahless was a warrior who united our people through deeds, not a god demanding worship. The distinction, a familiar voice said as Q materialized in the center of the infirmary, is thinner than you think. Everyone reached for weapons, except Sisko, who remained seated, eyes locked on the omnipotent being who'd started this catastrophe. Before anyone tries to shoot me, futile as that would be, I'm here to deliver my final assessment. Q's usual smugness was muted, replaced by something approximating seriousness. You all passed. Some of you barely, but you passed. This was a test? Kira's voice dripped venom. People died. Civilizations were disrupted. Benjamin's mind was nearly destroyed. For a test? Everything's a test, Major. Evolution is a test. Survival is a test. The question is whether you learn from it. Q turned to Sisko. You chose to become a bridge between mortal and immortal consciousness, knowing it might destroy you. You proved the prophets could adapt. That's not nothing. To Picard, you boarded a Borg cube to save an enemy combatant from torture, knowing it might trigger your own trauma. You introduced doubt into a collective that thrives on certainty. 1,600 drones are now individuals because of you. To Sloane, you learned slowly, painfully, that efficiency isn't the same as morality. Where I sent you, you watched civilizations fall because they optimized for survival at the expense of everything that made survival worthwhile. You're not cured of your utilitarian tendencies, but at least now you question them. To Garan, you learned nothing, but I didn't expect you to. Klingon are wonderfully consistent. Garan growled but said nothing. Q's expression grew more serious. The real test was this. When faced with beings of genuine divine power demanding submission, would the Federation maintain its principles? Or would you resort to the same tactics you claim to oppose? Genocide, thought control, forced conversion to your own secular ideology? We came close, Ross admitted quietly. You did. Section 31 developed a bioweapon. The Borg tried to assimilate what they couldn't understand. Even the prophets considered surrendering rather than fighting. But in the end, you chose dialogue over destruction. Voluntary exchange over forced compliance. You let the priors keep their enhancements but removed their compulsion to use them. You offered former converts both Bajoran mysticism and Federation secularism and let them choose. That's the difference between you and the Ori. You actually mean it when you say people have the right to self-determination. And the Ori themselves? Picard asked. They're still out there in their home galaxy. Still converting, still conquering. Not my problem. Or yours, for that matter. I sealed the dimensional barriers between this galaxy and theirs. The Stargate is gone, not just broken, but erased from this reality's possibility space. The Ori can't return here. Though. Q's smile turned mischievous. I left one souvenir. He snapped his fingers. Prior Damaris, Marcus Chin, appeared in the infirmary, looking confused. What, where? Your enhancements are permanent, Q said. The Ori's gift can't be revoked, even by me. Interesting loophole in the laws of reality. So here's your choice, Marcus. You can use your abilities to heal, to help, to do genuine good without the Ori's theology backing it. Or you can suppress them, live as a normal human, and try to forget you were ever enhanced. Free will. Terrifying, isn't it? Marcus looked at his hands, at the potential for miracles contained within his cells. What if I use them wrong? What if I become what the Ori wanted, someone who offers power in exchange for obedience? Then you'll have failed, Q said simply. But at least it will be your failure, not theirs. That's what mortality means, the chance to screw up spectacularly on your own terms. Q turned to address everyone. The Ori taught you something valuable. Gods who demand worship are tyrants. Gods who perform miracles to compel belief are manipulators. Real divinity, if such a thing exists, would respect the autonomy of those it created. The prophets are learning this. Slowly. Grudgingly. But they're learning. Sisko felt the faint presence of prophet consciousness at the edge of his mind, no longer invasive, but accessible. Like a calm channel he could open when needed, not a voice shouting in his head. They're trying, he confirmed. In their own nonlinear way. And the Federation? Q asked, looking at Ross and Picard. "What have you learned?" Ross considered carefully. "That we can't fight faith with facts alone. That people need meaning, purpose, something larger than themselves. The Ori offered false transcendence, but they offered it. We need to acknowledge that secular humanism, for all its virtues, doesn't answer every question. Some people need mystery. Need the sacred. We can't provide that, but we can stop pretending it's irrelevant." "Adequate." Q turned to Kira. "And you, Major?" "You who balance Bajoran faith with Starfleet pragmatism?" Kira took a breath. "I learned that the prophets aren't perfect. That faith doesn't mean blind acceptance. That questioning gods doesn't make you unfaithful, it makes you honest. The Ori's certainty was seductive because it removed doubt. But doubt is necessary. It's what keeps faith from becoming tyranny." "Excellent answer." Q's form began to shimmer. "One last thing, the 1600 liberated Borg drones? They'll struggle. Some will beg to return to the collective. Some will commit suicide rather than face the chaos of individual existence. But some, a precious few, will discover that freedom is worth the terror. Help them if you can. They're the collateral damage of my little experiment." "Your experiment nearly destroyed the quadrant," Picard said coldly. "But it didn't. You prevented that. Which proves my point. When pushed to the absolute limit, humanity, and its allies, choose compassion over expedience. Not always. Not perfectly. But enough." Q's smile returned. "I'm proud of you, Jean-Luc. Benjamin. All of you. Even you, Sloane, though admitting that causes me physical pain." He began to fade. "Wait," Sisko called out. "The Borg cube that Picard collapsed. How many drones died in the explosion?" Q paused, half corporeal. 4,612. Not counting the ones you rescued. Their deaths are on Picard's conscience, not mine. He made the choice to introduce doubt. He knew it might destroy them. Picard's face went ashen. "But," Q continued, 1,600 are free. 4,000 dead versus 1,600 freed. Utilitarian mathematics would say he made the wrong choice. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. But you're not utilitarians, are you? You believe every life has value. Every individual matters. So now Captain Picard gets to live with the knowledge that he killed thousands to save hundreds. That's the cost of principles. Welcome to moral complexity." Q vanished completely, leaving only his parting words. "Live long and prosper. And try not to need saving again. I'm running out of omnipotent species to throw at you." The infirmary was silent. Finally, Marcus Chen spoke, his voice small. "Dr. Bashir, if I wanted to learn how to use these enhancements to heal people, really heal them, not convert them, would you teach me?" Bashir looked at Picard, who nodded slightly despite his haunted expression. "I would," Bashir said. "But on one condition. You never use your abilities to coerce. Only to offer. Can you live with that limitation?" Marcus considered this, then smiled, the first genuine smile since his conversion. "Yes. I think I can." Outside the infirmary, on the promenade, former Ori converts and traditional Bajorans gathered for the first joint service, an experiment in theological coexistence. Videk Porta led prayers to the prophets while converted Bajorans shared passages from the Book of Origin, stripped of their coercive context and read as philosophy rather than divine mandate. It was messy. Uncomfortable. No one was entirely satisfied. But it was dialogue. And dialogue was a beginning. Sisko stood at the window, watching the celestial temple pulse with renewed stability. The prophets were still there, still nonlinear, still largely incomprehensible. But they were trying. And so was he. That would have to be enough. Q's intervention had been characteristically cruel and characteristically instructive. By opening a gateway to the Ori galaxy, he'd forced the Federation to confront questions it had long avoided. What happens when gods are real? When faith has power? When secular principles meet demonstrable divinity? The answers weren't clean. The Ori were repelled but not destroyed. Their converts remained, struggling to reconcile miraculous memories with theological abandonment. The priors, enhanced humans cut off from their divine power source, faced uncertain futures as neither fully human nor fully transcendent. And the Federation itself was changed, forced to acknowledge that scientific rationalism couldn't answer every existential question. The prophets had learned to defend themselves, but at the cost of their detachment. They were now active participants in Bajoran's spiritual life, no longer observers but engaged presences. Whether this represented evolution or corruption remained to be seen. The Borg had learned that some knowledge corrupts, that certainty itself can be weaponized, and that doubt, introduced into a hive mind, spreads like wildfire. Thousands died in the collapse of the cube, but hundreds gained freedom. The moral calculus offered no comfort. And the individuals caught in the crossfire, Sisko, whose mind now existed partially outside linear time. Picard, who carried the weight of 4,000 Borg deaths. Marcus, who had to rebuild identity from fragments of 3 different existences. They would carry scars long after the crisis ended. But they had survived. More importantly, they had survived without abandoning the principles that defined them. The Federation hadn't resorted to genocide. The prophets hadn't surrendered. The individuals caught between competing divinities had found ways to choose their own paths. Q had called it a test. Perhaps it was. Or perhaps it was simply the universe's way of reminding mortals that godhood, whether technological, spiritual, or omnipotent, came with responsibilities that most beings, human or otherwise, were unprepared to shoulder. The Stargate was gone. The Ori were sealed in their home galaxy. But the questions they'd raised, about faith, power, free will, and the price of certainty, would echo through Federation space for generations. And somewhere, in the continuum beyond space and time, Q watched with satisfaction. Not because he'd proven humanity's weakness, but because he'd proven their strength. When given every reason to become monsters, they'd chosen to remain human. That, in the end, was the real test. And they'd passed. Live long and prosper. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories. Thank you for watching.